Hey there, it's Mark Yagi. In today's video, we're going to talk about a long-term plan, having a long-term view when you're doing covered calls for passive income. And the reason you have to have a long-term view is because the stock doesn't always do what you think it's going to do. So stay tuned. I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios and strategies I think you're going to find pretty interesting. Here we go. All right, so this is something I just shared with my mastermind group, and so I thought it was instructional for people to learn this as well. So that's why I'm putting it out. But bottom line is covered calls should be more of a long-term process than a short-term trade, right? And so a lot of people just don't, when the stock's going down, they ask, should I go to cash? Well, that is certainly an option. I'm going to show you the difference between going to cash and actually putting on a covered call trade and sticking with it. So, we always talk about in our groups and in our courses, focus on the juice. The juice is the time premium. That's the amount of money that declines every week when you sell the calls. So that's income for you. So every week, every month, you're going to collect the juice. And if a stock is in decline, your account's going to lose value on paper, right? Or on the screen. You've got to decide based on your trading plan, which you've made in advance because you eliminate emotions. You've got to decide based on your trading plan what you should do. And so what can you do? Well, let me start with the setup here. All right. So let's say you have a base position in a stock at 200 and you decide that you're going to sell at the money for $4 a week every week. So that's $200 of juice, 50 weeks times 4 every, it's $200 and the stock's $200. So that's a doubling of your money, right? If the stock does nothing else. So we have to make some assumptions here. But the stock, let's say, goes down $8 a week in a down market. Well, you're only getting 4, so you're losing 4 on top of that, right? So your account is going down $4 each week times the number of shares that you have. So if you have 100 shares, you're losing $400 a week. So what can you do? Well, first of all, you can stay in the game. So you decide you want a really good stock. You're going to hang in the game and see what happens, and believe that the stock is going to go up at some point, or at least stop declining. That's scenario number A, letter A. B is trust your indicators and go to cash. Okay, cool. Maybe you have some indicators. We teach people to have certain indicators, certain moving average crosses or momentum indicators, whatever they are for you. You can use those indicators to go to cash. Or the third option, and I'm not really going to get into this today, is to sell deep in the money. So let's take a look at that. This is Apple, and I just picked a random period of time going back about a year. And you can see that Apple on the left side of the chart is in April of 2022 is 179.61, I believe that's the high. It was never higher than that. So we started at that spot. And of course, this is hindsight. Of course, we have to make some assumptions, but you're going to get the idea in just a second. So we've got our high of, let's call it 179 or 172 when the actual data started. So it was actually right after the decline started, but whatever, it's close. Somewhere in the 172 to 179 area. And you could see there's a big decline and then a bounce, and then a big decline and then a bounce. And this is Apple, and it never recovered from, going back to that 172 to 179 price in that whole year. So the whole year was basically bearish. 22 was a bearish market anyway. And so we're catching half of that market and a little bit of the rebound in 2023. But the stock never did get back on this chart to the 172 level. It got back up to what, 170 or I guess it's about 154. Anyway, we'll see that in a second when I show you the data. So we've got the high of 172.34 roughly. We've got a low of about 124. We're going to round some numbers off. And we're going to be collecting about 1.5% a week in juice. And it works out, I've already done the math, it works out to an average of about $2.23 per week. Now that's the time premium. So we skew where we're going to sell those calls. So let's say you have 1,000 shares of Apple. If you got 1,000 shares of Apple or you're using synthetics, we're talking about bringing in $2,230 per week on average for 52 weeks. Okay, so that's where the setup is. Now, let me get granular. Maybe you don't like to do the math. I don't either. So I'm going to do a couple of things for you. First of all, I'm going to show you the graph and the math, and then I'm going to show you the chart. So the graph looks like this. You've got to focus on the juice. This is scenario A. That's the long-term solution. So we start there at 132.74 in the upper left corner, and that's at the end of March of 2022. And then you can go across and you'll see the juice, which is the time premium. That's how much money we collected. That's 1.5% of the stock price. So our total juice is the third column or fourth column down, and that's 259. right? And that'll accumulate as we go forward. And then it'll take the adjusted close or the close of the stock, add the juice that you've received, and it'll give you a net value. Now, if you have 1,000 shares, we're talking about $174,000 starting amount after the first of the week, okay? After you collected that juice. Anyway, if you go to the next week, you'll see the stock fell down $4, but you collected another $2.52 at 1.5% in juice. So now you've got accumulated total juice of $5.11. So you've gotten paid $5.11 even though the stock has gone down. And so now your net value is now down a bit to $173, okay? And the stock keeps declining. And you can see if you go all the way down to the 52 weeks, at the end, you see that the stock is now $156.81, but you've accumulated a net value of $274.85 or $274,000 if you had 1,000 shares of Apple. Okay, so we have to make some assumptions because I don't know you, but you got 1,000 shares of Apple. So you made $100,000 essentially in your Apple trade, selling 1.5% per week, and the stock is down, right? It's down from 172 to 156. You with me? So it jives exactly with that chart that I just showed you. So here's the graph, and you can see there's a lot more money if you just focus on collecting the juice and use this as an income strategy and not as a capital gain strategy. That's number one. Number two, let's say that you look at that chart and there's an indicator. It's a momentum indicator, a moving average crossover indicator, a stochastics indicator, or something. We teach indicators in our course, but it's something that takes you out of the stock. And if it's in your trading plan, maybe you decide to go to cash. So let's say you go to cash in the fourth week. The stock's gone down from 172 to 168 to 163 to 159. You're like, I'm out of here. I'm not going to take it anymore. My trading plan says to go to cash. And so I'm going to go to cash, and I've lost $10,000. You're in cash now. Your account's just sitting there green in cash. Okay. That means you could deploy the money to something else. Or it means that if you've gone back to scenario A and just hung in there and knew that Apple was going to rebound or at least kind of hang in there, and you were going to be able to collect that 1.5% a week in juice, but you would have actually made $100,000. But it's tough. Look, I admit it. When a stock is going down, it's tough to hang in there. Like, you want to get out of there if you want to, you want to protect yourself. It's the other side of you is like, oh, I don't want to lose the money. So you have to decide in advance what's the right thing for you, because emotions are the enemy of the trader, and you get really emotional when you're in the market and the market's going down. So what are the conclusions here from all this stuff? First of all, conclusion number one is to decide your pain tolerance in advance using what if scenarios. What if the stock goes down 20%? What if it goes down 10%, 30%, 40, 50, 60? What if it just keeps going down? Now, we try to pick really good stocks, but you never know. We've never had a stock go out of business on us, but you never know. Like, they could happen. An Enron could happen. It hasn't happened in 23 years or whatever. The second scenario is you could, include going totally cash as a choice in your trading plan. There is nothing wrong with going to cash. The issue with going to cash is now you have to get back into a stock. And when you just got burned and you just made all those decisions thinking you were right, and now you have to go to make a different decision, it's a little bit tough to get back in, right? Maybe the market's not exactly right, or you're thinking the stock is too high. There's all these things that play tricks on your brain. So you've got to remember that too. And then the third thing, and we're not going to really talk about it because we do talk about it in other videos, is to consider selling deeper in the money, collecting less juice, but being protected by the protection amount as the stock is going down. So if your indicators are showing that a stock is going down, and we show you how to time that, then you can be deeper in the money. You won't make as much, but you'll also protect your account as it drops with the in the money amount, because that's dollar for dollar. So I hope that helped you a little bit to understand that, look, you don't always have to go to cash, although it is a viable option. Sometimes just hanging in there, sticking with your stock through thick and thin, usually pans out if you have a good stock, because the juice is going to bail you out of your position. Watch this video here, and you'll probably pick up a couple new nuances for yourself. Take care.